We have an urgent update for you folks as the 4-year traditional crypto cycle is now confirmed dead, because we've seen consistent deviation compared to the last 4-year cycle and the cycle before that after the Bitcoin halving, which has actually wreaked havoc across all crypto markets, and that's also because they are highly correlated to the traditional financial sector like the S&P 500, which experienced its first and largest 100-day loss since 1973 according to the Wall Street Journal. And by the way, that 100-day loss comes the 100 days after a new president enters office. Recession fears are further stoked by the fact that the odds are now reaching all-time highs, upwards of 70% on a betting market, Polymarket, which is actually pretty accurate when it comes to predicting future events based on all sorts of market dynamics, market participants, and where they're willing to place their bets. And this year, more than ever before, we've experienced more bullish news than ever before, whether it comes down to pro-crypto congressmen and presidents, or pro-crypto regulation, or bringing innovation back into the United States, or getting rid of Gary Gensler, who consistently attacked the space. Virtually everything is clear for crypto to fly. Even banks are now allowed to bank crypto, and that is directly from the Federal Reserve. But many people have been wondering, why isn't then price exploding? So you're going to want to pay attention in this video, because if you hold XRP, Bitcoin, Solana, DOGECOIN, or even SUI, then we have plenty of news to cover, as well as the price action on each of these charts. And you won't want to shut this video off, because I'm going to tell you exactly what happens next. Matter of fact, we're even going to cover some on-chain analytics to show you where the big money is going, so you can be ahead of the curve and make the right decisions with your portfolio. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel. So really quickly, to kick the video off, just wanted you guys to know that we are giving away $100 worth of XRP to one lucky winner every single week. Now, in order to actually enter, you actually need to follow the Bull Runners HQ on Twitter or X and like our pinned post, which looks like this. Then comment XRP on that very same post. Then on any one of the YouTube videos from the Bull Runners, and this is the final step, you can scroll down to the description or the pinned comment below and sign up directly through this link for a Blowfin account, which, yes, there are many deposit bonuses only if you sign up through our link, like a $5,000 futures bonus and all sorts of rewards for certain levels of trade volume. This is an exchange. So once you do all three of those steps, every single week the winner will be announced in our daily email newsletter on Sunday. In other words, if you're watching this video today, you have about 2-3 days left before the announcement on Sunday. So one last time, you head over to Bull Runners HQ, liked the pinned tweet, go ahead and comment below, sign up for a Blowfin account, and you will be entered to win 100 XRP, or I should say $100 worth of XRP. And so to check on Sunday if you're the winner or not on that email newsletter, you can still get that free ebook, and you will be entered into our email newsletter. And you, on the other side, you will get altcoin secrets, where you'll unlock the 23 secrets to become a crypto millionaire. So with that being said, let's dive into the video. All right, folks, so here's the deal. People have been relatively skittish and actually reaching out a lot, wondering what they should do with their altcoin bags. And in the cryptos I'm covering today, I would argue they're some of the strongest performers, or some of the strongest hold your bags through the end of the bull run type cryptos. We're talking XRP, obviously Bitcoin, Solana, DOGECOIN, and even SUI, which has one of the best blockchains in all of crypto using their Rust and Move languages that basically move transactions in parallel, which is quite efficient. However, crypto markets have been suffering because they are relatively risk-on asset classes. In other words, they are more volatile. Risk managers don't want to see losses in times of uncertainty, so they will likely sell any crypto positions or crypto they hold in their portfolio for cash, and that's because the crypto markets are tethered or highly correlated to the traditional financial markets. In other words, the S&P 500 did experience its biggest first 100-day loss for any president since 1973. And when you see a situation like this occurring, you're going to likely see a lot of that carry over into the crypto markets. Now, I can actually prove that to you. A lot of people might be saying, well, that's not true, we're untethered. And to a degree, we are in the long term. But in terms of the daily price action, day to day looking at this stuff, they're pretty correlated. I can pull up the S&P right here. I can go ahead and put it on a percentage scale, and then you can see that this purple line is the S&P 500 price action. And then right here, the lines that we have, or the price action in the red and green, is the price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin being the mothership and the largest crypto by market cap, it's actually quite insane, the difference. We're talking $1.9 trillion is in Bitcoin alone, whereas the second closest is only $221 billion. In other words, Bitcoin is up another $1.7 trillion. So you do have to watch what Bitcoin does. If Bitcoin starts to dump, believe me, the rest of the crypto market's going to dump, even your best holds in terms of altcoins or potential futures in terms of opportunities. So that said, right here, you can see that they're pretty correlated, right? They're both going down in unison. They both bottomed around the exact same time, pumped around the same time. Slight negative correlation right here. Bitcoin's trading flat while the S&P sold off a little, but even as of the recent price action going back to April 22nd, you can see both are up in relative terms. In other words, they are still highly correlated. So if the stock market crashes at some point in the near future, you can bet your butt the entire crypto market will as well. And so why have markets been skittish? Why has crypto failed to break out for new all-time highs? Or why have they been chilling in ranges, making weak or small bounces? We'll talk about that here shortly, but it's arguably because the majority of people are actually betting on recession. And again, when people are fearful, they tend to sell any crypto they have, any stocks they have, and sell them for cash or even bond positions. And because the recession odds have increased to 70%, we're still waiting on all of this positive news to ferment. We've seen so much positive news this year, stuff that I covered at the start of this video, and people are reaching out like, why isn't it moving? Why is the crypto market struggling? You guys said it would do this and that. And the reality is, you could have the most bullish news in history occur for crypto, which we recently saw. Even Donald Trump saying we're going to add all these cryptos to a strategic crypto reserve. Bitcoin's going to have its own national reserve. But in a weak macro environment, it's going to be very difficult for them to do well. It's kind of like you're pushing all of this weight down on the entire market. And so no matter how much you try to, swim up against it, at the end of the day, gravity, it's going to do its thing. Still, I will say the things that we're actually seeing are continuing to be more bullish. So I'm starting to see signs of a breakout, which is why I wanted to call this an emergency, because ultimately, if you miss this and we truly do break out here in the very near future, you're going to be pissed off you've been sitting out of the market or didn't add more to those positions. So we're going to be talking about the price action on all of these cryptos. But first and foremost, just want to show you that North Carolina just passed their bill to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And the same is actually true now for Arizona, which just passed for a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And guess what? As these states start to do better economically over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, guess what's going to happen for the rest of the states? They're going to have to follow and get on board, because they're going to look like total idiots to all of their constituents and peers in Congress. And so this is huge, because the Bitcoin balance announces apparently, and I'm going to go ahead and double check, I don't just trust everything I see online, on exchanges just hit a new 5-year low. So all you have to do to check that out is come over to Crypto Quant. From here, you can go to exchange flows. Obviously, it's going to be directly on Bitcoin, and go to exchange reserves, and we'll double verify. And consistently since the local top over here in March 12th of 2024, before we saw about 8 months of sideways range price action, the exchange reserves on Bitcoin, which is this purple line, has consistently been declining in mass. And I'm talking seriously, especially into this local breakout from about 87 to 88K to present day about $96,000 at the time of recording this video. We've seen even more Bitcoin ripped off exchanges. In other words, these are strong holders. These are holders that are looking at Bitcoin and saying, you know what, the prices that we're seeing now are likely going to be lower than the prices we'll see in the future. For that reason, we're going to withdraw from an exchange because we don't plan to sell it, and we're going to sit on it or be a custodian to it for a longer period of time. This is extremely bullish because, again, the less Bitcoin there is available on exchanges, typically, even if the demand remains the same, it doesn't even have to increase, the price will consistently be driven up by demand. Again, this is basic supply and demand economics, but this bodes very well not only for Bitcoin but for the rest of the crypto market, because again, if Bitcoin is doing well, it leaves breathing room for the rest of the market to do well also. And so you have all sorts of funds alongside players like MicroStrategy or Strategy that they just rebranded to, adding another 15,000 Bitcoin to their bags, as well as the ETFs that have consistently been increasing. And now when you combine that with a lot of buy pressure from individual states, you're going to see other states adopt that same approach to their treasury. And as the US also comes up with some creative ways to add to our strategic reserve on a national scale, virtually every other nation is going to follow. They're all going to treat Bitcoin like gold. So it's just a matter of time before price explodes, especially seeing all of the bullish macro stuff, at least from the crypto perspective, and all of the pro-crypto legislation that will enter over the next year to two. So this 4-year cycle has essentially been elongated. And we're going to talk about that here in a second, but even players, or better yet, cryptos like Solana, XRP, and Doge are extremely likely to be approved for their spot ETFs in the coming months. In other words, this is an emergency. If you haven't actually held any of these cryptos, or you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting to know when should I actually enter, I think starting to dollar cost average into these things before the news actually makes it to the traditional financial markets, because at the end of the day, you want to buy the rumor and sell the news. Well, guess what? Right now, this is the rumor. Nobody knows exactly when it's going to happen. However, a Bloomberg analyst forecasted that there is a 75% chance or higher in terms of approval odds. And by the way, Paul Atkins, the new chairman at the SEC, is extremely pro-crypto. So is the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. So is the Fed now under Jerome Powell, basically talking a big game about stable coins. Crypto is not only here to stay, we have all of the right players in the right rooms who are really going to try to push crypto forward and make the United States the crypto capital of the world, being the largest financial market in the world. That will be huge, even just in terms of the news cycle for cryptos. So you're going to want to be buying and holding all of the best cryptos into this, because guess what? If Solana, XRP, and Doge get approved, then it's extremely likely all sorts of other cryptos are going to be filed for in terms of a spot ETF like SUI, and even HBAR, ADA, AVAX, Litecoin, Polkadot, anything built in the United States that is typically transparent and has a real use case, utility, and company and structure. In other words, we've just experienced an elongation of this traditional 4-year cycle. It will no longer look like a 4-year cycle. It'll just look like a macro bullish cycle for crypto as it is more and more adopted for asset tokenization, Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation and fiat currencies with reckless spending, and all sorts of other use cases on the blockchain using the cryptos that we just mentioned. Let's have a listen to what the gentleman over at Bitwise actually shared recently with a pomp.
4-year cycle. Is it over?
Yeah.
Woo.
It's
Whoa.
over.
Okay, hold on. Explain.
Well, I mean, so my view of the 4-year cycle is you have a catalyst that brings new pools of capital in. So 2011, it was the launch of Coinbase. Retail investors could buy Bitcoin, new capital, then leverage builds up, and eventually it pops. 2015, the introduction of Ethereum. 2019, DeFi. 2023, it was Grayscale winning its lawsuit in March against the SEC. We're going to get ETFs bringing in capital. The reason I think it's probably not going to play out over 4 years is I think that's a longer inflow of capital than retail hot ball of money, which was the past 3. And then secondly, we have yet another of those catalysts in November, which is the election completely changing the game in terms of institutional adoption. So even if the ETF-driven cycle would have built up, leveraged, and popped and receded, we have this second tidal wave that's just so much bigger than that first one. It's going to overwhelm it. So will there be, pullbacks? We're seeing one now as leverage comes out of the system, of course. But the election was such a sea change that it's like, it doesn't matter. Yes, there may be this natural thing, but it's just going to get bulldozed over. That doesn't mean we've repealed pullbacks, but I think this cycle is going to be much longer than people think. I definitely don't think this pullback is the end. I think 2025 will be a great year. I think 2026 will be a great year. I think 2027 will be a great year. And we'll see about 2028.
And I can't help but say I actually agree. We are done with the 4-year cycle, and moving forward, just longer term, things are going to move far more steadily and essentially up and to the right as crypto reaches mainstream adoption at every institutional level. It's already here, and so you do want to prepare in the cryptos that we're talking about. Now, I'm going to cover all of the cryptos that I just mentioned in this video, and the first I want to cover is Bitcoin. Currently, we are officially in the bull zone. As you can see here, we've not only broke above the prior range resistance right here at about $88,500, but now we're actually trading above the prior local high on the Trump pump coming in March 2nd of 2025. Not only did we range in this range for a little while, but we had a recent breakout day and a little bit of follow through on the daily. Now, volume consistently increased at these ranges right here, which leads me to believe that yes, we are in healthy territory. I would not like to see a pullback below these lows at 91,000 unless, of course, we come and let's just say this is a local bull trap into a support at 88. So I'll be watching this price action closely, but with price action like this, again, it leaves room for the rest of the crypto market to breathe and find the strength to make new local highs. But this break right above this 95K range and back into above this support is extremely big and important for Bitcoin, especially with all of that Bitcoin being moved off exchanges and now states creating their own strategic reserve. The demand is just too great. So even with a bit of sell pressure, it's going to be very difficult for Bitcoin to dump, which is why I'm starting to get more and more and more bullish on virtually every other altcoin. So I'll start with Doge. And what's really interesting about Doge is you can see it's actually failed to break pretty hard at all. It's actually lagging quite a bit relative to Bitcoin. You can see volume has consistently decreased and declined. You can see that we are struggling to break above that 19-cent range. So for me, this is actually pretty strong accumulation, and I would argue if we touch the 19-cent range yet again, then this would be a perfect or a textbook inverse head and shoulders. We have our first shoulder here, we have our head here, we would have our next shoulder coming in right here at this low at 16 cents, and a break above 19 cents could lead us into new highs. Now, one thing to note with something like Dogecoin and why I'm accumulating it right now is this thing really does explode, right? When we break above a range high right here, you can see we get a nice little test pump and then a harder pump and then our final massive pump. And consistently, Doge has been a very strong performer, and arguably we're also touching that trend line. The bottom of this trend line right here, you can see that we're consistently touching it over a longer period of time since the lows of October of 2023. Again, you can see that this thing was lagging a bit relative to the rest of the market. Bitcoin was leading, and when this thing pumps, it pumps hard. So this is almost like a really easy play, especially with the declining volume into a breakout. I'm loving Dogecoin. I want to be holding that. And if they get a spot ETF, this thing is going to fly. I think this time around, we will go for new all-time highs. The last high was at 48 cents. The all-time high came in somewhere at 73 cents. I think we could potentially hit $1 on this guy. Now, Solana, similar fashion. What I'm interested in though, and at the end of the day, Solana has some of the most adoption of a layer one, is the fact that we were supported right here with a bear trap. People were trapped into being bearish below 120, but consistently going back to essentially April of 2024, this $125 range has consistently been a support. With this bear trap and a break above this range high right here at about 145, I'm actually pretty bullish on Solana. Now, that leaves room for me to be a slight bear, and I don't want to be a bear. I'm far more bullish, but at the end of the day, here's the problem. We traded really strong into that high of $209 from about 18 to 20 bucks. So there's just a lot of room for this thing to drop. If the entire crypto market drops and this thing drops below 122 again, then guess what? This thing is probably going to dump harder than something like Dogecoin, because Dogecoin is currently closer to that support, whereas Solana breaking below this support only takes us back down into that $60 range and even arguably the $30 range, which I don't see happening right now. However, the odds are low that we go into these ranges. I still want to be cautious. In other words, I would probably take a slightly smaller position on something like Solana than Doge. That said, Solana has traded a lot stronger, so take that with a grain of salt and into consideration. Now let's look at XRP. XRP is one of the most interesting plays from what I'm seeing right now. Not only did we make like a 500% pump from the lows going back to like November, the election of 2024, but for whatever reason, it has consistently held up better than virtually every other major altcoin or crypto in the entire space, especially with the bigger ones, right? We're talking large market cap cryptos, top 10. This thing's currently ranging between number 3 and 4, depending on the pump day. As we speak, we are currently trading exactly at that trend line, I believe. So this would be my actual trend right here. As you can see, I'm hitting the most points on the chart here, 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 here. This was the Trump pump rally where he said he was going to add XRP to a strategic crypto reserve, but this was actually just a bull trap. People used this news to sell their XRP positions for a new lower high. So that said, this is currently the trading range, and as you can see, we broke above and are now being supported. I would like to see more support, and I'd actually like to see XRP consistently hold that 10 and 20 EMA, which we're very close on. So I would like to see it hold this support and arguably get back above 230 before I start to add to my positions here, or I'd buy back on a breakdown to 203, but just understand that anything into this range is going to be danger territory for XRP. So this is kind of like a wait and hang out and see what happens for me, but I do like the fact that we have far more strength relatively speaking to the rest of the market. It looks very similar to Bitcoin, but it's been holding up better than Bitcoin, which leads me to believe that there are better diamond hands and potentially even more institutional demand at a smaller scale. So obviously the institutional demand for something like Bitcoin is far larger because that is reflected in the actual market cap. However, you don't need as much money to move XRP or support it. So for that reason, relatively speaking, XRP has been supported better. And then finally, let's get into something like SUI. SUI is really, really interesting right now. Now, I'm not loving the price action. Okay, I'm not loving this triple top right here on the 12-hour time frame. And again, I'm looking at the 12-hour, but consistently we are failing to break above that $3.56 range. And with a pump and rally this hard, this leads me to believe that there is a pretty strong market maker with a lot of money in it, potentially trying to take some profits into the bullish news and trend. And so since we have failed to break back above, I would say at least the $2.93 to $4 range, as you can see, we're consistently touching from back here at these range highs in November of 2024. Even with this volume, I would actually weigh on something like SUI for a break above and a support above that 376 to 390 range. And arguably, if that doesn't happen, this thing is likely going to break right back down to at least 270, if not 240. So the 270 to 240 range would be my actual range of support that I would like to accumulate and buy in. And this is something that I'm going to wait for a pullback or a breakout. But right now, I would not be buying SUI. Now, in the long term, again, this thing is likely going to get a spot ETF. In the long term, this thing is trending up hard and to the right. And so this is actually a pretty strong trend line right here. Notice that we have support right here. We have support right here. So a breakdown to here, even let's say by June of this year, would not be a bad situation situation to start accumulating something like SUI into a new all-time high. And I could see this thing hitting at least $10, $15, even $20 sometime end of 2025, maybe into 2026. So it's important to pay attention to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's currently on the day sitting about $96,700, looking really freaking good. So that's it for the video, folks. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and run over to bullrunners.com to check out Altcoin Pro University, your one-stop shop to becoming a crypto millionaire. Now, obviously, we cannot guarantee that you'll actually make $1 million, but we do provide all the right tools, training, and resources. So if you put in the time and have enough working capital, it's very much possible for you in the crypto markets, because we have a professional team of researchers and analysts constantly in there sharing all sorts of altcoin picks, DeFi yields, ways for you to actually get your numbers up and actually even just make enough money in the yields alone monthly to cover the cost of the membership, which is only $97. So for example, we have members that put in $1,200 into one of our DeFi yields per the week and is making $3.31 per day in yield, which actually covers the membership, and then everything else is free riding. And so if you want to learn to do technical analysis like me and be on those live calls that I host every single week only for our Altcoin Pro University members, then you're going to have to join. On Tuesdays, I run those calls and I answer questions live, things that you've actually been asking. But I also have a course here called Technical Analysis Essentials. And in this course, I put a lot of time and effort to building it out for you, whether it's laying the groundwork in terms of what you need to succeed, how to think about the markets, what's actually made me a lot of money, and how I approach risk management, which is extremely important, to using TradingView and adding cryptos to your watch list, to common trading tools and drawing tools, candlesticks and line charts and how to understand them from the psychology. Let me go ahead and get out of the way here. To bullish and bearish candlesticks and how to view them and actually how to use them only. Literally, you could use candlesticks to succeed as an investor, but also common indicators from RSI to moving averages to oscillators to Bollinger Bands to average true range, the Fibonacci, and then the 4 horsemen of technical analysis. This stuff will ultimately make you a pro. This is all in there with a ton of resources and guides and books. And guess what? It's all there for the price of only $97, plus all sorts of other access things and bonuses. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Just check it out. If after 14 days you can't even get into one of these yield picks or pools, which we explain exactly how to do, then guess what? Go ahead and ask for your money back. It's really no risk to you. I'll give you one example, right? This guy right here joined because he's already made money with the stuff on the YouTube channel. He says, thanks Nick and Paul for hours of videos. He was able to make a profit just by watching the YouTube videos and following along. We're really excited. That was just the YouTube videos. The value here is far greater and endless. Even one of our own members responded and said, this is going to take your skills up a notch. You're in the right place and there's tons of learning to be had here. We have great coaches and a community. And the yield opportunities shared by our experts are endless. Matter of fact, one of our analysts is even sharing the basics of lending and borrowing on Aave, which is a DeFi protocol where essentially you can take crypto that you already own and borrow small amounts against it, whether that's used to live, which would be tax-free, or used to buy more crypto in a dollar cost average way. Literally, the opportunities are endless, and he shows you exactly how to do all of this step by step. Again, this is only available for our Altcoin Pro University members, and all you have to do is click on your browser and type in bullrunners.com. That will take you to a page that looks like this. Go ahead and check it out, and I look forward to seeing you on the inside. Thanks so much for watching the video, my friend. I hope you got some value. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.